Okay, are you ready? My job today is to make people mad. I hope to offend the maximum amount of people, but if I am able to express myself correctly, I will offend the right people while bringing new insight and encouragement to the rest of you. But I'm really curious to know who will be offended and who will be excited about the things I'm talking about. So here it goes. If you are a parent of school-aged children, I know what you really want for your kids. You want your children to be their best, unique selves. You want them to have learning experiences that are exactly at their level and in their learning style because you know that that's how your children learn best. Listen, friends, what you may not know is that your children will not have the opportunity to be their best selves as long as you continue to compare your kids to all the others. This includes the kids in school. In your mind, you want your kids to be special and unique, but you've got this one crazy habit that works against that desire. If you worry about your children succeeding in school, you are stuck trying to make your kids like all the rest. I want to help create a shift in your thinking, a shift that will make a long-term difference for your kids. Listen up. Maya Angelou was right when she said, if you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. This is at the core of everything I'm talking about today. I know you want your children to be successful, but when you try to make your child like all the others, you are limiting their prospects. As a matter of fact, the only place where it's important for your child to be like all the rest is in school. In the real world, out of school, it's important to stand out, to have outstanding resumes and applications, but your kids don't have the chance to be their best selves when your main objective is to keep them from falling behind, or even when your objective is to get them ahead of all the rest. There should be no comparisons to peers or any other standard school requirements. I know this is a whole new way of thinking about education, and for most people, it's a hard one to completely wrap your head around. Most people believe in their hearts that they want their children to be extraordinary, as an outside or beyond ordinary, but they have a hard time taking the big step to let go of old beliefs and habits. In reality, it is a select group of people that will actually take the leap, and I'm looking for those people. Is it you? Before I go any further, I want to just mention that the photos that I'm showing in these slides are all pictures taken at Celebration Education Learning Centers, where learning is dynamic and fun. Now, I want to point out that I'm pretty much just addressing the conditions of the typical kindergarten through sixth grade corner public schools today, but much of what I'm saying also applies to middle and high schools as well. See, state standards are not a magic formula for your kid. They simply represent the things the majority of the students are capable of doing at each age. Parents often fear that if their child doesn't learn a skill at the same time as all the other kids, that they will forever be behind. But this is not true. Unless your child has serious learning disabilities, your child can learn reading, writing, and math at any time. As a matter of fact, many kids that wait until they are ready to learn have been known to master these important skills in a matter of months and even weeks. The kids find it fun and even exciting to learn many things quickly. Louis L'Amour said, acquiring an education has many aspects, of which school is only one, and the present approach is, I believe, the wrong one. Our methods of instruction do much to hamper learning. Our approach is pedestrian. We teach a child to creep when he should be running. What do you think about that? The truth is, kids like to learn. It's school they don't like. They like spending time with friends, but more and more kids actually need to get away from a toxic social environment as well. They need the ability to choose their friends and to avoid bullies. Okay, so am I right about you so far? Are you mad at me? Or are you starting to get excited or maybe worried? Because you can leave your kids at the regular school, or you can give them so much more. There's a whole world of possibility out there. There is no reason to continue to hold them back. Not everyone will make this leap, but maybe you will. Maybe you will choose to make a difference for your kids today. But you don't have to just take my word for it. What's super cool about this approach is it's not new at all. Dynamic And personalized education or personalized learning is actually a natural and normal way to learn if school doesn't get in the way. It's how people have been learning for thousands of years. It's how Leonardo da Vinci taught himself. It's how Thomas Edison taught himself. It's how Alexander Hamilton, Abraham Lincoln, Claude Monet, Florence Nightingale, Booker T. Washington, um, Phyllis Wheatley, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Orville and Wilbur Wright, Susan B. Anthony, Charlie Chaplin, Charles Dickens, Albert Einstein, and Benjamin Franklin, and so many more people, they taught themselves. Each of these people I named did things that nobody had ever done before. They were able to do these things because they were not required to go to school and to try to be like all the other kids. All of these people gained their educations through non-traditional means, giving them the opportunities to do more than they would be allowed to do if they were in school. Because you don't get something new by doing the same thing that everyone else does. But I know what you're thinking. I know how you feel. It can be scary to leave the system that has been part of your entire life. I wasn't always an advocate for the authentic learning approach. Here's my story. Back in the late 80s, I decided I would homeschool my kids. This is before my oldest was even born. I chose homeschooling because I wanted to give my children the opportunity to learn from more than one teacher, one textbook. I wanted to give them the chance to learn anywhere, at any time, from anything and anyone. And this was before there was internet. And I should have stuck with those ideals. But by the time my older two were school age, I had them in a public school homeschool program through our county. I felt like I needed the support of the system. I didn't want to have to find and purchase the resources on my own. So they gave me a stack of books for each kid. We were dedicated and consistent with the curriculum, and we finished early. But I wanted more for my kids. I wanted to have my two academically similar children work together on science and social studies. But the county told me I can't skip grades. But that wasn't even what I was asking for. I wanted my kids' learning to be customized for them. I wanted a more life-friendly approach. And this was the beginning of my reawakening. Going forward, we homeschooled on our own without the safety net, and I'm so glad we did. We were free to read, write, solve, explore, and experiment together as much as we wanted to. My kids did reading, writing, and math every day, but beyond that, we had adventures. Not only did my kids learn the 3 R's, but they also became masters of their own learning. They were allowed to follow their curiosities and try new things. I learned that by exposing my children to a variety of fun, interesting, and even exciting things, they wanted to know more. They did research. They learned how to teach themselves. They even took on challenges that were harder than I would have given them. This is the magic of getting away from a standardized education. By the time my children were adults, they had written volumes, developed design skills, started a business venture, and become a computer tech nerd. These things would not have happened if I had insisted that my kids do all the same stuff as the other kids did. This was a conscious decision I made to allow my children to focus on their strengths. In the process, I learned that schooling is not the best way for children to learn. I learned for myself that children love to learn on their own terms. See, standards-based education really only works for those that happen to be at the top of the stack in their school. But being on the top of the stack isn't even a guarantee of success. It really just means that they are the best at performing the dog and pony tricks that the schools require of them. Now, with the lockdowns, you may have learned that children don't actually need 6 hours a day to learn. You may have learned that kids can learn without a classroom or even a Zoom call. If your child has been stuck on Zoom for an entire year, it's because the school needs your kid there, not because your kid needs the school, because learning offline is exceedingly more powerful than learning online. Something else that you may have learned lately is that maybe the mental and emotional strain that children endure in inadequate learning environments is just not worth it. Now I want to share with you the next thing that families are about to learn. Personally, I have no fear that all these kids in distance learning for a year is creating a whole generation of kids that are behind and can never catch up. because I know that kids can miss more than a year at school and get caught up in just a matter of weeks. I've seen it happen. These types of leaps happen in authentic learning all the time. Schooling for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 10 months in a year, 12 years is not necessary. But I tell you what, I've been involved in alternative education since the 80s. I have friends and associates that have tried out every kind of educational option, including unschooling. Here's the thing, kids with minimal schooling do just as well as kids that overschool. They go to college just as much. They are all capable adults. More and more kids are defying the old stay in school adage and are better off for it. But I'm not just talking about getting away from old school thinking. I want to encourage more families to move toward the things you miss when you're stuck in a classroom or online. It's about gaining so much more. As a matter of fact, far too many homeschooling or distance learning families are still caught up trying to make their kids like all the rest. They're still using the dead curriculum that was designed for a crowded classroom. They stay with what they're familiar with. My goal today is to try to convince just a few more families to break free from the mind-numbing norm. So moving forward, I want to share with you some tools you can use now so you can start to have these authentic learning experiences with your kids right away. Now, if you want to make sure that your child does not fall behind, this is not for you. If you find comfort when you see your child obediently doing worksheets, this is not for you. If you want your child to be like all the other kids, this is not for you. This is for anyone who wants their child to be an individual, a child who stands out, a child who is different and not afraid to make a difference. You can have so much more than standard. I'm going to go quickly as possible. I'm going to go over the 3 principles of authentic and powerful learning. Number 1 is curiosity and adventure. Children often have a hard time keeping their hands to themselves because they are conducting experiments. They wonder, what will happen when I push this? What does this thing feel like? Or what's under this? This behavior might drive us nuts, but this is evidence to you that your children love to learn. Can you imagine how great that feels? The problem is that teachers give the kids all the answers and then ask the questions. This is such an uninteresting, distasteful way to learn. Kids actually don't want to be given the answers. They would rather explore, read, experiment, and search for the answers themselves. They are screaming, "Let me do it." To make sure that kids have plenty to be curious about, we like to give kids adventures. Make no mistake, adventures are opportunities for children to be introduced to new things in powerful and dynamic ways. We call it high impact learning. They call it fun. Does this make sense to you? So, for example, you can expose your child to a variety of topics and talents. You can take her to interesting places, allow her to take meaningful classes, share engaging books and authors with her, and you can provide a variety of interesting materials that she can use for her own projects. This is true learning, and it's so much more than the read, regurgitate, regret practice that most kids endure. When kids get to learn through adventures, it's like lighting a fire in them. Their light bulbs burn brightly and they want to know more. They will ask questions and they will seek their own answers, all without a school assignment. Here, it might take a lot more planning and preparation on the part of the teacher or you, but it's worth it. You owe it to your kids to make their school years as effective as possible. Let's not waste their time. Normal school is old school. It's time to change. Lectures, textbooks, and worksheets are not required. This is when your children will strike out on their own with insatiable curiosity that leads them to want to know more. This is when they break from the crowd. Again, kids don't like schooling because they want more. They want to learn. They are yearning to be free. They want to move, try and do. They want to take a more physically and mentally active role in their own learning process. Okay, so curiosity and adventure is the first principle of authentic and powerful learning. The second principle of authentic and powerful learning is the basics, the 3 R's. Obviously, we're not going to ignore reading, writing, and math. These are the most important academic skills, and we all want our children to be proficient in them. But it still doesn't mean that you have to use the textbooks and worksheets that were designed for crowded classrooms. Of course, I want to point out that as your kids are experiencing learning through adventures and curiosity, they're likely already doing some reading and writing and maybe even some math. That said, I think it's important to hit on the basics every day just to make sure they continue to progress in these skills. It takes only about an hour and a half each day at the most. Then, as you hit on the 3 R's with your kids, you naturally help them learn exactly at their individual level. For example, if you notice spelling, grammar, or punctuation errors in your child's writing, you will help him right then and there. Immediate and relevant teaching is exceedingly more powerful than stacks of worksheets. After all, it's like taking a shortcut and learning and coming out ahead. You will likely find yourself helping your child with stuff they might not even be introduced to until they're in a higher grade in a normal school. But you know what your kids can do, and there's no reason to hold them back. Your children are better served by making sure they are not like the others. This brings us to the third principle of authentic and powerful learning. It's what I like to call genius. I want you to know that this third principle is not last because it's least important, but because it's the goal we are working toward. Whether you want to admit it or not, every child is different. Every child has unique abilities, but the more time we spend focusing on their weaknesses, the more we dumb them down. We need to focus on their strengths. That's what we do as adults, right? You and I don't usually focus on our weaknesses because it's through our strengths that we pursue our education, hobbies, and careers. Why would it be any different for our kids? Hey, it is by working within a child's strengths that the children really come into their own. You wouldn't tell a child actor or a professional athlete that they should spend less time in the studio or the gym, right? These fortunate kids know their strengths, and we appreciate that they spend extra time working on their talents. For example, that's what tennis superstars Venus and Serena Williams did. These girls were homeschooled, an option that enabled them to work on their talents from a young age. But we also know that this focus on their skills did not prohibit them from also becoming very adept at their other school subjects as well. We know this because these girls are also college graduates, business owners, investors, actors, and authors. Nobody would say that their education suffered because they spent too much time playing tennis. The Williams sisters didn't miss getting a well-rounded education. They just did it their own way. It is when children are allowed to focus on their genius that their learning experiences better match their natural proclivities, thus growing more brain cells or smarts that will also help to improve all learning in all areas, including the things that don't come as easily for the child. You know your kids, you, not the school, are in charge of their education. Mainstream education keeps trying to make a homogeneous society when actually what we need is a society of geniuses, right? Your child has their own special mix of talents that no other kids have. Let's celebrate it, not punish it. Allowing your child to focus on her geniuses instead of her weaknesses will not mean that your child is behind. It would mean your child is ahead of all the other kids that are out there fighting and scratching to be the most standard kid there is. So, the three principles of authentic and powerful learning are curiosity, the basics, and genius. It's a lot easier than you think. It's cheap or free, and it's a lot of fun. This is a whole different way of thinking, but it's not impossible. I know you will do whatever is best for your family. What it boils down to is this. I want you to have all the tools you need to give your kids the opportunity to be their best selves so that you can stop trying to make them like all the others. I say try because you won't actually succeed in making your kids like all the rest. The human spirit in them will eventually prevail in the end. But my concern is what will happen until then? Will your child be belittled, chided, prodded, and cajoled into doing all the dog and pony tricks with the rest of the kids? Will your child come to believe that who they really are is not good enough? Will your child suffer from stress and anxiety over trying to live up to everyone else's standards for him? I hope not. It may have been Michelangelo that said, the greatest danger for most of us is not that we aim too high and miss it, but we aim too low and reach it. Like the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So do you remember the list of successful people I talked about earlier? They couldn't have achieved so much if their parents had insisted that they be like all the other kids. Schools have to test, classify, sort, and standardize, but you don't. Enough is enough. There's simply a lot more to life when you're not trying to be like everyone else. So, are you one of those people that will take the necessary steps to allow for powerful learning experiences for your kids? Will you do what it takes to draw out the extraordinary in your kids? Before I finish, I have some homework for you. I want you to think about how important your child's education is. I want you to actually take some time to put more thought into how your child is being educated than the time you spent buying your car. You need to do your research and you need to think for yourself and you need to stand up for your child. I know that your local school is not likely to adopt authentic, individualized education anytime soon, but your kids are growing up right now. You don't have time to wait. Interestingly, even the public schools know that authentic, individualized learning is better for kids, but there are two main reasons why they don't and won't do it. Number one, they have to be accountable to how the tax dollars are spent. They need to prove that they are being responsible with the public funds. They need to show that they're getting results. This means they need to test, measure, and categorize groups of students in order to create reports that show that the funds are spent appropriately. It's about making the schools accountable, but it isn't what's best for the students as individuals. The second reason why schools will not be adopting individualized, authentic learning anytime soon is because they have too many kids in the classroom. With 20 plus kids in a room, it's impossible to teach for each child to get individual attention. To try to make the most out of this unnatural grouping of children, schools use standardized curriculums that literally keep all the kids on the same page. It's really the only chance teachers have to keep order and get anything done. So the children are fed little bits of learning each day using a slow and boring drip system of building on each day's learning. This is actually what makes kids not like school. True, authentic learning is loud and messy and does not require textbooks, worksheets, or tests. But one teacher with 30 kids cannot facilitate dynamic, fast-paced, individualized learning. Now, I understand that it's free and convenient to take advantage of your neighborhood school, but given what we now know about how children learn best, this is when free is actually expensive, because when it comes to what your children are missing out by keeping them in a normal school, it can be very expensive in the long run. Now, I want to point out that for the most part, the teachers themselves are not the problem. There are many great teachers that do amazing things despite the conditions that are required of them. So if you want to know more about authentic individualized learning for your kids, I have some resources for you. First, get a free membership at learningoutsidethebox.com. We're still getting content on this site, but soon you will be able to use it to find others in your area. You can look for homeschool co-ops, pod schools, micro schools, part-time schools, or private schools that are moving toward non-standards-based learning. You will also have access to free weekly outlines of curriculum-free activities you can do with your kids. Second, buy my book. I'm actually just finishing writing a book about how you can have these powerful individualized learning experiences with your kids. We're going to run a crowdfunding campaign for the book soon. So if you're a member on our site, you will have a chance to buy the book before it even comes out. Third, upgrade to our low-cost membership plan. I've been running classes for homeschoolers in Southern California for 15 years, where kids come to our classes for up to 3 days a week to experience collaboration, educational games, experiments, and messy projects like you see in these pictures today. Now, I took what Celebration Education does and created an easy and inexpensive system that anyone can use anywhere. We are preparing this system for our members to use our curriculum, our system, and our business tools for their own learning groups starting in the fall of 2021. It will cost around $300 for the school year. But right now, while we're still uploading content, we're still in beta, you can have access to this year's lesson plans for only $25 until the end of June. With this low-cost membership, you have access to 17 weeks of lesson plans, so you don't have to create all the adventures yourself. This is far less money than you would pay for a tedious, boring classroom curriculum. Try it out today with your own learning group. Not only will you get the great lesson plans, but you will also have access to the business plans that you can use to start a learning group of your own and even make a little money for yourself in the process. Go to learningoutsidethebox.com for details. So let me summarize and review. You can leave your kids where they are now, and they will probably be fine, just like all the other kids. If you think it's nothing, think again. You really can break free and give your kids the education they yearn for. You can help them specialize and stand out from the crowd. They can be extraordinary. There's simply a lot more to life when you're not trying to be like everyone else. So, are you one of those people that will take the necessary steps to allow for the learning experiences the powerful learning experiences for your kids? What's holding you back? Let's face it, if you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. With the right environment and the right incentive, the children will amaze us all. Given the freedom to work and learn at their own pace and within their natural talents, our children will not only learn the things that society says they should learn, but they will also set themselves apart as individuals that possess unique talents, and they will complete projects that impress colleges and employers. So, which are you, offended or excited? I just hope I have empowered at least a few people to try something new for their kids. Be sure to check the links in the description for more resources. Please share this video with anyone you think could benefit from this conversation. Post your comments and your questions and I'll answer them. Bottom line, you love your kids and you want them to be their best selves. You can do this if you really want to. There's simply a lot more to life when you're not trying to be like everyone else. Join the adventure right now at learningoutsidethebox.com. I'll see you there.